And welcome, everyone. Here we are again on a rainy East Coast day. Welcome to everyone to this week's KMWorld Magazine webcast series event. My name's Andy Moore. I am publisher of KMWorld Magazine. I'll be your host and moderator for today's event. As I said, today is part of an ongoing series. We do these pretty much every week, but check your email, check our website for the schedule of this series of educational live interactive web events, please. And please come back. I'm really happy to welcome you to today's installment, which is actually really, really interesting because it's I see it as like every leg of the stool in the information management tool set, and we're calling it "What's in Your Data: How Information Management and Analytics Avoid Risk and Create Value," and that "and" is underscored. The thing with managing large volumes of data is that it costs, and it costs a lot. So the key to finding the many ways that intelligent information management, along with efficient search and e-discovery, etc., can save you money and gain revenue is possible. That's the good news. Both are possible. And in terms of risk control and e-discovery, the ability to find the necessary content in the event of a litigation can be a lifesaver. In terms of value creation, finding information you need to make decisions is a no-brainer. And to do both of those things at the same time, you need to have firm control over your information assets and the ability to analyze what they are, where they are, and what they mean. So, management, analytics, and collaboration are forever entwined, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me quickly, just by name, introduce our speakers. In terms of saving time, I won't introduce them at length, but you can read their bios by clicking on your bio tab. First, we're going to have Scott Grenier. Scott is Senior Systems Engineer at Code 42 Software. Then we'll have John Falahi. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Content Analyst Company. And then we'll have Jay Leib. Jay is the Resident Computer Assistant Review Expert at KMWorld. Like I said, I won't be introducing them at length. I will just introduce them by name, but you can clearly go to their tab and read anything about today's speakers that you'd like. As always, there will be a rich interactive Q&A session after the presentations today. Please ask your questions anytime during the event. You could start now if you'd like by entering your question into the text box and then hit the submit button. I'll get your questions aloud, but let me let you know that if yours isn't answered aloud during the event, I will make sure that these guys do their homework and make sure to answer your question offline after the event. So, as I said, in the interest of time, I'm going to get going because we've got three great speakers today. I'm going to introduce first Scott Grenier. So please help me welcome Scott Grenier to the stage.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Just a real quick brief about us. Code 42 Software's flagship product is called CrashPlan Pro E, and it's continuous automatic endpoint backups. So it's a solution that not only protects your information and reduces overall risk, but it does create additional value for your knowledge management program, and I'll go into a lot more detail here. Prior to joining Code 42 Software, I was a senior systems engineer at LinkedIn at a time when the company was growing really rapidly from 300 employees in just 3 offices in the U.S. to over 3,000 employees in 30 offices around the world, all within a real short, time span of just under 3 years. And prior to LinkedIn, I worked for or consulted to a good number of large enterprises in industry verticals ranging from retail to government and motion picture production. And the reason why I, wanted to mention that is that, when I started at LinkedIn, we didn't have a phone system. This was in 2009. So when everybody was already using their own iPhones and Androids, throughout my entire time there, I used my own phone. So they were embracing the bring your own device phenomenon from a very early day. iPads, of course, started rolling in on the first day they came out. Our executives were waiting in line like all the other, nerds in Silicon Valley, and they came running it back to the office and said, I want to use this. So, we didn't have a desk phone, things like that. And we're also a highly mobile workforce. Everybody got a laptop. So tons of road warriors running Macs and PCs. Plus, I wanted to make sure I could, back up my Linux machines, which were creeping in, replacing some developers, desktop systems, coming up. So my primary mission was really to balance making my users and, of course, my help desk productive and successful without compromising security. So I've been kind of dealing with this these kind of challenges for quite a while here. So, as mission-critical data has been leaving, the relatively cozy confines and safe confines, of the desktop within trusted networks and physical walls. And this, of course, has proliferated quickly with the advent of smartphones and tablets that are not always company-provided. And so the first part of knowing what's in your data is knowing where your data is being created and kept. And then once you know where it is, you can go about making sure all of it's being protected from loss and safe from prying eyes. And this has become a hard problem for IT, and with users becoming more tech-savvy, using freemium or commercial-grade services like for sharing and collaboration purposes, and using their own devices, because presumably what they use at home is actually better than what IT has been providing. No offense to anyone out there, but that's how they're feeling, and so they're bringing their devices to work, really whether you know it or not, and because it's easy for them to actually to use it. And trying to crack down or force them to use, IT's idea of what's best for them, of course, could easily blow up in their faces. So, if you think that IT was afraid of losing control, then, how's that been working out, right? So when it comes to protecting your data, there's a number of things that can mitigate most of your risk, really. First, back it up. The first question that gets asked whenever there's a loss is, well, did you back it up? So first, back it up, right? Endpoint backup's an integral part of your information management strategy. And back it up to more than one place, of course, and not only really for disaster recovery purposes, but assume technology is going to let you down from time to time. Hardware fails, software crashes, upgrades fail, equipment and data can get damaged, lost or even corrupted, so have at least 2 copies. Secure it using encryption and control access only to authorized users. Again, this is, risk management 101 here. And people, of course, will definitely let you down, right? It's that pesky human factor. So, everything from user error to misconfiguration to laziness, taking the path of least resistance, ignorance, even negligence. So try to eliminate that as much as possible to reduce your risk. And lastly, know who has access to what and when. So IT departments, more than ever need visibility into their IT ecosystem, whether that's systems in their network or whether they're using cloud services. They need to have that visibility. And they need to know to do that because that's how they measure how effective they are in doing their job, protecting the enterprise. And by that, when I say protecting the enterprise, I mean not only protecting intellectual property, but also productivity. So, how does endpoint backup balance the security needs of the enterprise without impacting productivity? We feel we've solved that age-old challenge for IT with CrashPlan Pro E. However, any effective modern endpoint backup solution will do all of these things. Number one, the data, of course, needs to be encrypted in transit and at rest. It must eliminate the human factor as much as possible, both for users and admins. Make sure that you get all of your data while making sure that you're reducing the impact on bandwidth and storage, which, of course, are your 2 biggest costs. when it comes to capturing and protecting that data. So that means things like deduplication, compression, bandwidth controls, right? You may have users scattered all over the place, and you never know what kind of systems or network they're coming off of. So you want to make sure that you can protect their data without negatively impacting, weak connections, things like that. Make it easy on the users and admins. That's kind of my mantra, right? It should be automatic. It should be continuous. It should be silent. It should provide self-service restore capability for your users. And they love this, by the way, and so does your help desk, right? For instance, Apple is one of our biggest customers, and they have exactly one full-time employee that manages their whole, CrashPlan Pro E infrastructure for all 40,000 of their users worldwide. And they do that by leveraging, the automation capabilities. And that's huge, right? No one, some companies I've been to have full backup teams, and it doesn't have to be that way, especially, when IT is being squeezed, to do more with less, right? Of course, make sure your solution does no harm, right? It plays well with the other apps and services and running on your network. So I kind of alluded to things like, bandwidth controls and things like that. Make it, it needs to work everywhere, right? Because people are no longer just coming to the office and going to work anymore. So that's important. It's got to work everywhere, especially when someone needs a restore. So access is really key. It's got to be flexible. You need to be able to control where your data goes. Not all of it can necessarily go to the cloud, so consider a flexible architecture there that can help meet those different use cases and business needs. And, of course, make it cross-platform. A lot of enterprises have Windows and Macs and maybe even Linux these days, and a cross-platform solution reduces costs and the learning curve for admins and users who use or support multiple or changing platforms. Again, at LinkedIn, we were 50% Mac, 25% Windows, and 25% Linux. Kind of gone are the days of 100% Windows shops, or almost gone, at least in my observation, working with a lot of these companies. Especially as, kids are coming out of college, and all they've known is how to use a Mac. And so they're given a PC, and they don't know what to do, and they ask for a Mac. So, so a lot of companies are preparing for that. So cross-platform is important. And you don't want to train, your help desk or users to have to train on and use different solutions for every, platform that they might use, right? So that can be very time-consuming. We and you are not in the backup business. We and you are in the restore business, honestly. Successful restores are the number one metric that your backup solution and you will be measured by. So your users, however, are in the productivity business. They're now working from the office, the home, on the road, possibly from more than one kind of or brand of device. One of IT's missions is to make their users as productive and successful as possible. Self-service restores is a productivity and a morale booster, honestly, and it reduces the burden on your IT department's help desk significantly. Of course, you may need to control who's able to restore your data, so make sure you have that too. So speaking of, what's happening with your data, did you know that you could use your endpoint backup solution to facilitate your legal hold process? Apple, Salesforce, and Netflix are just some of our customers who use CrashPlan Pro E to great effect when it comes to legal holds, and this provides a ton of value. They back up their user's home directory as usual, but if they get a subpoena, they simply add those in scope to a special organization which contains a backup policy that backs up all their files from the root of the file system. Every time anything changes, those versions are backed up and kept forever, automatically, continuously, and this includes deleted files. So, for instance, one of our customers is the University of Texas. Their CIO is always under litigation hold because, he's a CIO. His IT department would come to his desk every few days or so to image his laptop for forensics purposes. He travels quite a bit, so it's kind of a painful situation for him and his IT department. And now his entire laptop's just being backed up automatically, continuously, everywhere he goes, and every version of every file is kept forever, including applications, OS files, his settings, and, of course, any deleted files. And UT can then, if needed, restore everything to another system for investigation purposes without having to take his machine away, which is obviously a major productivity killer for such a high-level and important guy. So I'm just going to wrap this up, circling back to mitigating risk, having visibility and keeping your people productive, like it or not, good or bad, your users will take that path of least resistance if IT is not meeting their needs, especially if they feel they're more productive and empowered using their own devices and selected software, better than the stuff IT provides. Back up their data whenever and wherever they're working. Couple this with full disk encryption. That safeguards against a lost or stolen device exposing data to unauthorized or hostile individuals. And then, of course, have the ability to recover quickly. Configuration management and mobile device management solutions provide the ability to rapidly replace lost, damaged, or stolen hardware. And your endpoint backup solution enables the ability to restore to your user to that very point in time when they had the loss and get them back into the game as soon as possible. Eliminate the human factor is really important, both for users and admins. Automate as much as you possibly can. Make it repeatable. Of course, some things in life are non-negotiable, as IT is still on the hook for protecting the company's data wherever it's being created and used. So who's responsible for security? Everybody, right? So make everybody aware of what's going on, what your mandate is, and the importance of protecting their data. I believe most users would do it if it was just being, if they know that it's important, but for them to try to remember, it's difficult, but you have to remind them. So they got to protect their data from loss, which is an obvious productivity hit, but also from theft and from risk of mission-critical data falling into the wrong hands. And this is required to mitigate risks that can't really be mitigated through automation and automation and technology. And with that, I would like to thank, each and every one of you for attending the KMWorld event and having Code 42 on this great panel discussion. For more information, feel free to drop me an email or visit our website at crashplanproe.com. And back to you, Andy. Thank you.
Very great, Scott. Thank you very much. And we will get back to you in a few moments with questions. I've already jotted down a few of my own, and I know that the audience is thinking of theirs too. So we'll get back to you in a second. But before we do that, we have a couple of other speakers. I want to move on to John Falahi. John is the Chief Strategy Officer at Content Analyst Company. He'll be speaking to us for the next few minutes, and will also be on the Q&A. So everyone, help me welcome John Falahi.
Thanks, Andy. I'll just spend a quick second on the company. Content Analyst is a provider of text analytics to other software vendors. We don't sell direct to end users, but we work with many partners in many different industries to keep enhancing and improving the way they can look at information. So I'll give you a quick overview of what the product's capable of doing from a high level. So the core technology really looks at information differently. Before I was a leading product manager at one of the largest search companies and looked at what was missing. And the key thing that nearly all technology out there that kind of retrieves information, most of the ones that we're used to, looks at information through the eyes of predefined dictionaries, word lists, spelling lists, and other things. But it really doesn't understand conceptually kind of what are those words and how do they really relate to other words in the information set that we're trying to look at or index. CAT basically understands information like humans do. It uses a mathematical model of hundreds of vectors to do it. But a human does it in a way where, if we think about it, we have our five senses in time. So if I mention the word coffee, every one of us has a different visual in our mind. And if you smell the coffee, it probably relates to lots of other things in your head that it's completely different than anybody else. I.e., if you looked at the information inside of a financial company versus a petrochemical company or a commercial real estate company, all those references and the way they use words would be different because of their market and their differences and the internal folksonomy and terms that they use inside that company. And here's a place where the system can learn all that just like a human does and then apply it to the capability. So what we're really trying to solve, though, is when we're looking at information today, is really kind of the two trends that are really hitting us hard at every level inside of a company. The growth of data, i.e. big data, and the new rules and regulatory issues coming on to digital information. As we keep going digital, the regulatory and government and restrictions are coming on higher and higher on what you can do, how you can do it, when you need to retain it, and how often. And so we really need to think about the term information governance really affecting everybody. And behind the scenes, it's the data volume that's really going on. If we look at the information that everyone's collecting now at extreme rates and extreme volumes, it's all about trying to improve the way they look at their customers, their business, their markets, et cetera. So they're trying to make that information strategic. But sometimes it's a risk or a burden because they've collected a lot of it, they haven't classified it, and it sits on the storage devices or archives and backup systems, and they really don't know what they have. And in some cases, it just takes up space because it really isn't a corporate value anymore. So what we're really trying to do is apply and understand a way to put good classification on the information so the information is findable and actionable at every step of the process. So what we're really trying to do is good information management. So just a quick point here, in the next 4 years, the volume of data and velocity of data that's hitting everybody, according to Gartner, will be a $230+ billion expenditure for corporate IT. So there's an opportunity for businesses, and there's an opportunity, if IT spends the money correctly on new innovative techniques, to leverage the data effectively. So in not all cases do you have to replace things, but you have to enhance the current systems to make them better. And if we look at what's going on throughout the information lifecycle, every phase is being addressed by some different application, but nearly every case there isn't a consistent classification of the information throughout its lifecycle. So what might be done up front in the creation phase in business apps or Microsoft Office might not align with what's going on in the content management systems, Exchange, and then into the compliance systems like e-discovery that Jay will talk about, storage that Scott talked about. But ultimately, some percentage of that information really has no value anymore. My favorite is, for a while I was at Microsoft, and when Ballmer hit send on a holiday email, there was 90,000 copies. By the end of the week, there was probably 1.5 million copies. In 3 months, those emails didn't need to exist anywhere in the system and could be removed, saving time and space and potential litigation burden. So what we're really trying to do is look at what's the underlying issues. It's consistent tagging, easy find, performance, and making sure it's cyber secure. So we have a number of things to follow up on. For Content Analyst, our approach is make the definition of the categories concept-based using examples. One of the other things about the technology, because it's mathematical, it's language agnostic. It works the same in any language because there's no predefined dictionaries. We own patents on cybersecurity. It's been proven in a number of industries, and its performance, because it's an in-memory solution, makes it second to none today. So in summary, it's really quick. Information governance is hitting everybody because of the volume of data and all the new rules. You really need better information management and new approaches to make it, happen. Consistent classification is one way to make it work. And at the end of the day, if you can really apply it properly, your information is strategic, and you've gotten rid of the junk that you don't need in your corporation. So hopefully that gave you a quick view. If you have any questions, you can reach me at contentanalyst.com or just send a general to information.com, and we'd be happy to get contentanalyst.com and get back to you. Andy, I'll turn it back over to you.
And I'm certain, John, that they'll have interesting questions for you coming up in the Q&A session. And I hope that our audience, which is actually very vibrant and very nice size today, will join in the Q&A session coming up in a few minutes. But before we do that, we need to have our third speaker, which is Jay Lieb. Jay is and he's going to have to describe what this means to me.
I like to think of it as guru.
Resident Computer Assistant Review Expert at KMWorld. He's going to have to explain what that means to you and me, but we're glad to have him.
Great. Thanks very much, Andy. And it's a beautiful Midwest day here in Chicago. I've really been enjoying the previous presenters. They've done a great job so far. First, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the company and then kind of move on to the topic. Because we see here that we've been describing that I work for KMWorld. Again, my name is Jay Lieb, but the name of our product is Relativity. So KMWorld, we developed the e-discovery software Relativity, which is a web-based platform that works for e-discovery with processing, review, analysis, and production electronic data. We have more than 75,000 active users worldwide from organizations including the U.S. Department of Justice, and also 95 of the top 100 law firms in the United States use Relativity. And we've been recognized as a leader in the Gartner's 2013 Magic Quadrant for e-discovery software. So that's a little bit about the company and about Relativity, the software. But back to our topic here. We've been discussing what's in our data and how information management and analytics can avoid or actually mitigate risk. But what happens when there is an event, something like civil litigation or even an investigation? How can we use tools and process to reduce this risk and cost during e-discovery? So let's kind of examine some of the costs associated with e-discovery lifecycle. Now, this is the framework from the Electronic Discovery Reference Model, the EDRM, and it shows the task associated with a typical e-discovery lifecycle. But this particular framework is showing it in two dimensions: the order of the tasks, as well as the cost proportionate to the whole workflow. And I should mention that this framework is provided by the EDRM and George Socha as well, so I want to give consideration to them. So what happens during discovery, we need to meet the obligations of the case, and typically we start on the left-hand side, identifying the data. And I think Scott brought some things up about legal hold and about identifying what data. That's the preservation phase. So we start all the way on the left-hand side during the early phase or early life cycle e-discovery, and we move all the way to the right-hand side throughout the life cycle where the data is actually produced to the other side or presented in court. Now, you can see there's a big box in the middle that says Review. This is where human attorneys or investigators review the documents to determine if they are relevant to the case. Well, in 2012, the RAND Institute did a study called Where Does the Money Go? And estimated that over 70% of the spend or costs in e-discovery had to do with humans looking at documents or the human review. So this is why and where clients are now looking for new approaches to review documents and to reduce costs and risk. So increasingly, our clients and many users in the e-discovery community are turning to assisted review to reduce the cost and risk. We feel that assisted review is a process that leverages technology as well as people and amplifies results. So let's kind of talk about the three elements of assisted review. So one, as Andy was joking about, experts. So within many organizations, there's experts, people that know maybe tribunal knowledge about a particular product or feature set, like maybe the presenters on the presentation today or myself with computer-assisted review. But within a case or an investigation, there's typically a domain expert, someone that knows the case well or understands the fact patterns. This person is essential, or maybe it's a few people, is essential to making this workflow really move. So we need a domain expert. Next, we need the analytics engine. Now, John had just talked about the CAT engine, and that's a great text analytics engine. We need some sort of engine here to be part of this process because we're going to leverage humans and technology to reduce the cost and risk with a e-discovery lifecycle. So the final piece of this is statistical validation. So we're going to use an expert to identify documents. We're going to use the engine to find more documents so we can reduce the noise. Then we're going to use statistical validation to make sure that the efficacy of our workflow is going well and that we're actually meeting the obligations of not only the project, but also of what the review team has wanted. So 3 elements to assist a review: a domain expert, an analytics engine, and statistical validation to pull all of it together. So let's kind of talk about the workflow itself. I'm talking about the elements of it, but how does it actually work? So at the top of the circle here, we need some kind of document universe, a document set. And what we do from that document set is we pull down a thin slice of it, a sample of the documents. And we give those to the reviewers, and you see that in the orange box. And we have the reviewers, these domain experts, review these documents and make judgment calls on these documents. Are they objective calls, objective coding? Are they responsive, not responsive, relevant, not relevant? Is this what they're looking for, a yes or no? Thumbs up, thumbs down. So then we move to the next box, which is at the bottom there, which says categorize the document universe. So we take these example documents from the sample set that the humans have reviewed, and we feed these to the engine now. And the engine's able to, as John had discussed, there's different mathematical algorithms going on behind the scenes. But the documents, they're able to analyze these documents and understand the rest of the population and give back how well it thinks it's doing. And it validates the results, meaning that the engine is saying, we think these other documents are just like, are very similar to what you're looking for, or conceptually very similar. And it's asking the users, in fact, are we correct? Are we getting this right? And we're validating the results at that point. And just like a regular spin cycle or wash and repeat, if it doesn't meet the results that we're looking for, we just keep continuing until it meets these results. The engine, as we're going throughout the process, gets smarter and understands more about the documents. And it's getting closer to the way that the humans are thinking about. And in our previous presenter, John, had been talking a lot how we're trying to have the computers understand much like humans do. And that's what we're trying to do, is train the humans much like the domain experts. So here's a kind of a high level of a workflow on a real project, or in this instance, a fictional project, hypothetical project. So if we had a total number of documents, say 1 million documents, we pull down a sample of, say, 1,000 documents, and we give these sample documents to the reviewers to review. Once they finish reviewing, which we call the orange round, we go ahead and we push the button in the software, depending on how it's architected. We push the button in the software, and we have the software go out and find other documents and put them in buckets. And so our example here, after the 1,000 documents are reviewed, the computer goes ahead and finds 290,000 and some odd documents as responsive. It finds 695,000 documents or so that is not responsive. There's a certain number of documents it just is not able to figure out what it is. It's uncategorized at this point. And maybe we would do some kind of manual workflow on those. So once we finish this round here, we go ahead and what we want to do is do the validations round, a QC round. We want to see how well did these judgment calls, the way that the computer had decided on these documents, categorized them, how well they had done. So we pull down another 1,534 documents for sampling. And we have the humans, again, review these documents, not knowing that, in fact, they're actually QCing the computer's work. We have the computer go ahead and categorize these, use this new information. You can see that in the second round of categorization that it's actually changed a little bit. There's now more documents that are responsive, a little less documents that are not responsive. And so we can see the computer's changing its answers a little bit. We go ahead and we do another quality control round to see how well the computer is doing. And we can see here that at this point, after reviewing another 1,534 documents, the validation criteria was met. And so at this point, we'd stop this part of the phase. And you can see here that we've manually reviewed 9,000 documents. But in fact, there was 990,000 documents that were manually reviewed or automatically categorized by relativity using the engine. And what this can translate is that we can translate that there's 317,000 documents now that are responsive and can be prioritized for second pass review, for reviewers to do a more formative production review. And that we can also see that we can have a potential savings over 16,000 hours of human review time by not looking at those documents that are substantially not responsive. So a couple quotes we wanted to put on here. You see the top one, Judge Grimm is saying that, has been quoted as saying that the use of advanced analytics tools could be deemed reasonable as the approach. And you also see that second quote by Dr. David Grossman. Dr. Grossman authored a study on the sister review workflow, and he concluded that the efficacy and the results were sound. So we have judicial support for it, as well as a scholar saying, academic saying that in fact the workflow is sound. So as part of our process to kind of figure out what's in our data set, reduce the data, reduce our cost, there's other features of text analytics that we can also use in conjunction with a sister review, or maybe in some other instances in replace of a sister review. As John had kind of mentioned about the analytics engine, you can use analytics engines to do automatic clustering of documents. So without any kind of human intervention, we can have the computer go out and find which documents are conceptually similar and put those in buckets where the human reviewers can review those and get through them faster. The engine can, in fact, put together email threads, so it can figure out if documents are linked together by email that was forwarded and replied. So now we don't have to look at all these different documents. We can look at the one main document that has all the content. We can do searching based on concept, not on keywords, but on concept. We can find similar documents that have maybe this very similar or duplicative text in it. We could pull those together. Again, so the reviewers can review one document and be able to make judgment calls on a variety of documents. We can do foreign language identification. So instead of going through documents with human English reviewers spending time and money on trying to review documents that they really can't because maybe it's in a foreign language, what we can do is identify this foreign language and be able to push documents to native language speakers to reduce costs, put our spend in the right place. And finally, what we can do is try and find content that is being repeated so they can remove that content. So the reviewers don't have to waste their time looking at disclaimer notices or have the engine look at disclaimer notices or privilege information at the bottom. So there's a variety of problems that text analytics can solve. It can help find things if you have a problem like, I don't know what's in my case. There's a variety of tools and solutions for it, including clustering, keyword expansion, foreign language detection, email threading. We have, if you have a problem such as we have relevant documents, now we have to do issue coding to bucket them even more for review, we can use solutions like a sister review, find similar documents, clustering, and email threading to also help in that way. So let's kind of talk real briefly and kind of in this wrap-up is some real-world situations here. We had one client that had a 1 million-page project, and we were able to use a sister review and save over $120,000 and over 2,500 hours of human review time. We had another client that had over 4.5 million documents in a large environmental matter, and they were able to remove 3.5 million documents using computer-assisted review. Tremendous time savings, as well as quality improvement. And finally, we had a recent client that had a government investigation, a second request, and there was 1.6 million documents after deduplication, and they were able to reduce this to roughly 6% of the original data set, and it was able to save the client more than $2 million in human review time. And this, in fact, the DOJ, I don't want to say they approved it, but what they did was they were able to say this workflow is sound for this particular project. So, Andy, I want to thank everyone for listening today, and I look forward to the roundtable. But for more information, you want to understand more about relativity sister review or other text analytics features within the eDiscovery world, you can go to our website. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much, Jay, and I believe that is a good piece of advice. Please go to those websites, and we'll probably be skirting you off to a couple of more when we get off of this event today. I want to start this sort of Q&A session with my own question, and I'm going to start with Scott. You said that somewhere in your the presentation you said that everybody is responsible. talk to me about how that works in an organization. Does that mean that there is an ethic that has to be applied? Does that mean that there is the rules that come down from the top that have to be applied? How does that work? And maybe Scott is still on mute. Scott, are you there? Okay, sorry about that. We'll go on. Oh, wait. Are you there? No. Okay.
This is Jay. Most people just bring phones into that from the wild. You can't control humans.
You can't. I mean, that's kind of my point. Is people create their own SharePoint sites. They create their own. They take home information on their BYODs. What does it mean to say that everybody is responsible?
Yeah, I'm here now. Technical difficulties. Sorry.
Sorry. No, I'm glad.
No problem.
Thank you.
Well, it does. You touched on a number of things, right? And I've, in my experience, the security awareness programs and the security programs that have been the most successful start with that ethic in the very beginning. So that is a belief on behalf of leadership in doing things the right way and having a security model early on. So at LinkedIn, one of the things that my predecessors did there really, really well was that they put a very strong security model in place at first. Trying to retrofit security after the fact is a lesson in futility. It's really painful. So that was one of the things they did really well. And the other thing is that, their management, their leadership really embraced the importance of security as well. As fast as they wanted to go, right, this is Silicon Valley. Everybody's trying to rush to market and beat the other guy, we're right next door to Google. So you can feel it, as fast as we wanted to go and innovate and produce and release, we wanted to make sure we did it right. So that, it starts with that. Awareness is really important, right, because you can only solve certain, you can solve technical problems with technology and you can solve political problems with politically, I guess. But, in the end, the users have to be aware of the importance of it. And so, I think we did a pretty good job at just being very communicative. And then we also did something that might seem kind of counterintuitive, and with that is we empowered our users. We empowered them to, if there was a piece of software that they needed that made them really great at what they did, then they should go ahead and get it and just let us know so that we can make sure that we cover the license. And if it happened to meet a general use case, then we added it to the general, baseline image that we gave everybody. So we were very open and honest about, and kind of have this open door policy. We did surveys and things like that to find out what the users really wanted, and then we could, then we can go ahead and answer those things.
Yeah. And John, and I'm going to address this to you, but anybody can jump in at any time, so please feel free, you guys. But this sort of points to this question that I had pre-prepared for you, which has to do with how in the information life cycle of a document can it always be, timely and accurate? How exactly do you have consistent categorization throughout the life cycle of a document? Something might mean one thing today. It might mean one thing, 3 years from now.
Yeah, Andy, that's a good point. Usually, though, if you look at kind of the major tags on a document, it'll fit into some major issues that the company wants organized by. it's either tagged in associated with a product, with a division, with a marketplace, some other internal rules, regulatory rules. There are then what I call toggle tags, like hold flags. There are also rules that, because it is given a certain policy code, which means it relates to its retention policy. It also could relate to a digital rights management policy. The issue usually is you want those consistent. So you'd like to have a very easy way to create the categories, define them, and then have them applied no matter where the document is. In certain cases, you might want to go back to certain repositories. As Scott said, you're doing a retrieval back of something that's on the archive or stored, and have those go back through a categorization system to see if there are any new tags that should be added. Usually, in most cases, things aren't removed except toggle tags like hold flags and a few others. But other ones are really important that they're there, because usually those are the things that the search engines and other tools are using to create filters and navigation. If you go to a shopping site, which kind of is the easiest one to think about, most people go to Best Buy, for example, and never type a thing. They just go click on TVs, drill down on LEDs, click on the size, and then they see the set of results that they're looking for. They might use some words, but more and more we've gotten pretty lazy and use good classification schemes to help us navigate and discover the right set of documents. And in certain cases, it's really important that sometimes it's not so much the tag that's changed, but the associated policy with the tag. And if the document is classified correctly, you could update your rules as they change in your industry. For example, the retention policy for certain types of emails, or for even marketing literature in some of the pharmaceutical industries, et cetera. How long they have to keep things around changes as they shift country and shift potentially some new regulatory rule that will change the policy, but probably doesn't change the tag.
Yeah, I actually was at a conference once and asked an audience, when is a taxonomy done? And everyone raised their hand when I said never.
Yeah,
it's never done.
Yeah, and that's one. But the one difference with the approach that we do is that we understand the concepts. Because one of the biggest problems with traditional word-based ones, you have to keep adding the new words or add rules as the term drift. If someone's talking about spam, that word has two different meanings depending on your era, and so do many other words over time.
Yeah. And Jay, I guess the question kind of now floats over to whether or not technology is always the answer. Is there ever a time when we don't use technology? Is there ever a time when it's just people?
Yeah, absolutely. The technology is just an enabler. You have to have the right strategy and the right process. The technology is just an enabler. It's like comparing, would you rather go to a concert to listen to the Rolling Stones, or do you want to listen to it on your iPod? Both have situations for use. In our instance here, when we're talking about e-discovery, there's instances where we want to go faster and get through documents quicker and reduce our costs, and there's times when we need to find the document, the smoking gun. But sometimes technology may not be as efficient, or maybe as a human that understands kind of the nuances of the case. Temporal situations, for instance, when it's not the fact that this document is with this person, it's the fact that this document's with this person at this time. Maybe it's some kind of price-fixing type of case. Or the fact that this person has the document overall is important. So these are the kind of things that using some assisted review may not bubble up or may not do as good a job as a human on its own, because the humans have more information to work off. It's outside the boundaries of the text.
Interesting. Scott, I'm going to kind of maybe change channels here a little bit. You talked a lot about, and we've all talked a lot about mitigating risk through backup and, information management. But what about the other side of it? What about the creating value side? How do you think that a backup solution that you talked about creates value for an organization?
Sure. Yeah, we get that a lot. So I touched on legal holds. This is actually something that's gaining popularity with our customers. We're getting asked about that more and more. The thinking is that if you have a product that runs continuously and automatically and can keep unlimited versions, including deleted files, and by the way, this is on a configurable basis. It doesn't have to be on a global basis, so you could have your normal backup policy, and then you can have the ability to leverage the unlimited versioning and keeping of deleted files forever for things like legal holds. That's really gaining a lot of steam. And like I mentioned before, IT is always being asked to do more with less. So if they can get really good use out of this product, it touches all their endpoints, all their people that have laptops and things like that. It's pretty powerful. Other ways, here's one is migrations, right? So we have an adoption feature that allows for companies that are doing hardware refreshes, things like that. So if you're going from, say, Windows 7 to Windows Blue, or if you're going from Windows to Mac or Mac to Linux or something like that, our migration feature actually allows that to actually happen really seamlessly. So, for instance, Salesforce, one of our customers, they have tons of salespeople in the field, and they have to refresh these laptops out in the field. And so what they would do is they bring them to Florida for sales training, in the middle of summer when it's really nice, of course. And they would have to turn in their laptops on the first day, and they had 40 contractors that would intake all these laptops, and at the end of the weekend or however long the event was, they would get their brand new machine that had all their data, restored to it. The problem with that was that it required 40 contractors to do all that work. They had to, kind of copy all the data off of the old device and copy it onto the new device, make sure the new one had a backup just in case there's any problem on the way home or something like that. And so now with CrashPlan, they just email them the new laptop, and here's a one-sheet, instruction set that says, log into the CrashPlan client, hit adopt the archives from your old system, and hit restore. And it restores everything from the old system, up to the moment of the last backup. And it's backing up continuously, so they didn't lose any data. So now they may still go to like sales training in Florida, but they don't hire 40 contractors. So they saved a ton of money that way. So that's another one. Mobile device access is huge. We have mobile apps that allows, iOS devices, Android devices, Amazon Kindles, and Windows phones to access the same data that was backed up on those laptops. So if you lose your laptop, you may not always have your laptop with you, but you presumably, always have your smartphone with you or maybe a tablet. You can still access all of your backup data in all of those versions. You can open those files up on the phone and everything. So really tight integration with the mobile devices, and that provides ubiquitous access to your data in a safe and secure manner from wherever you are. And lastly, IT departments want to make sure that before they embark on other IT initiatives like full disk encryption, that they back up the user systems before they do such a thing, that if it went wrong, and it has in the past, that they can actually recover that user back and then try it again. When I was at LinkedIn, we rolled out full disk encryption, so we wanted to make sure everybody was backed up first. And sure enough, my laptop, of course, was one of them that died, and so I'm glad we had backups. So it was a way for us to reduce risk for these other initiatives that were scary in the eyes of users. Whole disk encryption, you're going to take my machine and you're going to encrypt it, and what if something goes wrong and I lose all my stuff? So that was important as well. So there's all kinds of different ways.
I had a question, but it's sort of mirrored from Janelle in the audience, which is introduced by you just now. So thank you for that lead-in. And it really has to do with, what are the next things? What is the next hot topic that we need to be talking about? Not just in legal, but otherwise. That we're only just starting to think about. I mean, we've never thought about these kind of elements of information management very much before. And Janelle in the audience wants to know, what do you think are the next thoughts? And I'm going to just go down the line and let you guys all have a shot at that. But let's start with. Well, we hadn't heard from Jay for a minute, so let's start with Jay. What's the next big thing?
Well, I think we're in it right now. According to Forbes magazine, that 50% the information growth is growing at a 50% clip per year. So we really are in this golden era of content creation, and tools like Scott had just described are backing things up. We're creating more and keeping more and growing more than ever before. So we are going to have to understand ways to do proper housekeeping on our data and how to find things. I mean, most people go onto Google, type in pizza, they find the first three results that kind of are near their neighborhood, and they use them. But they don't realize what they might have missed, or what they had, or what should have been wiped from the list. I mean, so that's what's happening today. Is understanding information governance at a big picture perspective.
Yeah, and categorizing and analyzing. I think you're right.
Yeah, all techniques needed to kind of wrangle this herd of data that's out there.
So let's go down the list. I know this is a broad question, but I mean the best way I could put it, John, is what's the next big thing?
Yeah, I think you have three speakers that are triangulated around, or if you take the intersection of what we do, is really where the next big thing that I've been seeing a lot of interest in. We have a number of partners doing some interesting stuff, and that's, for lack of a better term, defensible deletion. And Jay hit on the kind of the trend that everybody's been talking about that's been whacking us for the last 3 or 4 years, big data, and what are we going to do with it? But it's now the other end where the trend has crossed the line from, low-cost storage is keeping up with the amount of data to the amount of data we have out on these archives and storage and backup systems are kind of over the top, and it's now turning into a cost factor again. And then you compound it with before IT kept everything because they never wanted to get in trouble, and now corporate counsel is going, look, if we're not supposed to keep it and it has no value, get rid of it because I don't want to go pay anybody any more money to go figure out, is it important, is it part of the case, et cetera. So coming up with ways to look at, from the perspective of the legal community, the storage and backup community, how can we analyze what's out there and cut down the amount of information that's basically no corporate value. There's a couple of surveys recently done where over 50% of the information out on that's backed up and stored is either A, no longer needed because of any retention policy, or B, has no corporate value. There is no reason to keep it, meaning there is no regulatory issue to keep it, and yet it's still backed up and stored because it's an email from an executive, even though the email is talking about sports fantasy. So a lot of things.
We're going to have for lunch. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that if people really got smart about what they should be cleaning up, they can actually save themselves space, time, money, and potential risk. And I think that's the hot spot for a lot of these corporations. They still got to solve the bigger picture that Jay laid out. But this, if you're looking for kind of like what's the new hot topic, it's how do I get rid of all that stuff and figure out what's out there so I can get rid of it and know that it's not going to cause me a legal issue or lost value down the road.
I know, but there's a huge gray area in the middle of that has to do with maybe this is important, maybe it isn't.
Well, that's where you need smart conceptual-based categorization so that you can go define junk just as easily as you define key categories that you want to keep.
And Scott, I'll let you have the last word on this
Sure.
very broad question about what's up.
No, it's good stuff. Good panel, and John had mentioned defensible deletion. We do get asked about can we securely make sure that this data is wiped out from the archives. We have defense contractors and other types of companies that have real sensitive proprietary information that they are under legal and regulatory obligation to make sure that they handle the disposition of it when they're done with it. So we're definitely wading into there. The big thing I think from where I sit and kind of from how I'm viewing this whole nexus that we've been talking about is sharing and sync and doing that securely. Enterprises talk about losing control. We have users that are using Dropbox and other types of these freemium services to share stuff because it's easy and they know how to do it, but they don't really understand the implications, and it's just driving the security folks nuts. It's driving IT crazy. So if it's not an official IT sanctioned type of a system and process, they have very little visibility. So they need to provide what they want, and there are some things coming up with Code 42. We're working on a product that is going to basically tie in with our flagship product really quite nicely to better manage that data that's being backed up on your system. So not only you know what's being backed up, but you can facilitate sharing and you can put the kinds of controls you need around it while making sure that your users are productive and successful. So we're trying to crack the code on that one. That's kind of been an issue that's been bugging IT folks for a long time, is how do we secure things like sharing and wrangle control over that data. And there's other uses for sharing and things and sync, such as revision control, or you may be able to, as John had mentioned, you want to be able to have value. There could be value in content reuse or previous versions and things like that. So the ability to know that stuff is out there and there may be some value to it is important as well. So it's just all about visibility while coupling and balancing productivity.
Well, guys, I know that we could go on, and I'm certain that we could. However, we're out of time. I know that people block an hour for these events, so I'm afraid it's time to close today, but I hope we get to do this again because this is a great discussion, and it really deserves more talk. I want to thank Scott Grenier at Code 42 Software. I want to thank John Falahi at Content Analyst and Jay Lieb at Kekura for today's great presentation. Thank you guys very much. This was maybe one of the best ones we ever did. I want to tell the audience they are able and allowed to download the PDF of the slides from our presenters today, which they've allowed us to do generously. But, as always, you can review this event or send it to a colleague to view. We'll archive it for about 90 days or so. You use the same URL you used today or always find it from KMWorld.com. So I only want to finalize by saying thank you all for coming. Thanks the audience. And I want to say just by attending this event, you can win an Apple TV. We'll put your name in a drawing, and we'll pick one name, and we'll get you a nice present if you're the lucky drawee. So thanks, everyone, for coming today. Thanks from rainy coastal Maine. We're at the end of a tropical storm here. So please come back again. Thanks, everyone. My name's Andy. Thanks. Bye-bye.